We're joined now by the president's counselor, Kellyanne Conway. Welcome back to This Week, Kellyanne. So we saw what the president said on Friday, which, raised a lot of eyebrows because of what the president said earlier this month. Just want to show everybody.
I can tell you Matt Whitaker is a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
So why did the president change his story?
The president is saying he didn't know him before, meaning he's not slotting in just an old friend of his. He's actually elevating.
He said, I don't know twice just in the clip he just showed.
But what he means is, and I talked to him just this morning, he called me from Paris about this to say he's got 100% confidence behind Matt Whitaker. The Deputy Attorney General has called Matt Whitaker a superb choice. Says, quote, he knows the department, he knows the work. That's important because Mr. Rosenstein has been overseeing the Mueller investigation and he's still in place as the #2 at Justice. What the president means is he's not slotting in somebody that's an old friend or somebody he thinks that he's discussed the Mueller investigation with at length. There's actually no evidence to me that Mr. Whitaker knows anything about the ongoing Mueller investigation. He's been the chief of staff to the recused Attorney General for 13 months. But the president wanted to have a continuum. He wanted to elevate somebody who was already there, in this case, the chief of staff who's been there for 13 months, and keep the DAG in place also.
Right, but, there have been reports even predating the choice of Matt Whitaker that he met with the president several times in the Oval Office, maybe a dozen times. New York Times said that they had great chemistry. That's one of the things the president liked about him. He clearly knew Matt Whitaker, was familiar with his reputation, was familiar with his work. So we just don't understand why he would tell the whole country, I don't know the man.
When he's saying, when he's saying, I don't know him, he's saying, I don't know him well, or I didn't know him before. He said in your last part of the clip, I didn't know him before, except that he was the chief of staff and that he's highly respected. That's all he means. And I think it's important to show that the president is trying to have a continuum because we've already been very compliant with the Mueller investigation. 1.4 million pieces of paper produced, 33 and counting individuals who either have been interviewed or asked to produce information. Everybody's been very compliant. And I would point out, though, according to your own ABC News poll released this week, you had two data points in there that are instructive. One is 42% approve of the way Mr. Mueller is handling the investigation. 46% now disapprove. That's different. And in the separate question, according to the poll you released, 41% believe it's a justified investigation and 54% call it politically motivated. We've been compliant. It's going to go on. Nobody's interrupting it and interfering with it. But I think many Americans have a legitimate question, when will this end? So
has the president asked Matt Whitaker not to interfere with the Mueller investigation?
I am not aware of that. I doubt that he would do that because it would prolong it. And the Congress, the Democratic Congress, I don't think a Republican Congress would allow that, George. We've been nothing but compliant. But let's go back to what the president said on Wednesday in that STEM Windover press conference. He answered 68 questions from 35 reporters, and a few of them had to do with the Mueller investigation and also with Russia collusion. He's saying what he said all along. There is no collusion with Russia. And if this investigation has taken other areas, gone down other avenues, that's again, away from what we were all promised from the beginning, which is the campaign that I ran to a successful part somehow colluded with Russia. We did not.
One of the things that everybody's been waiting for is whether the president will answer the questions of Robert Mueller. Does the president intend to submit written answers to the questions from Mueller? Will he meet with him in person?
Well, you'd have to ask his outside counsel that. But I don't know. I can't really blame the president if he doesn't, just because of everything that's happened with this investigation. But at the same time, he's always said he'd be willing to answer the questions. I read a report this week, and I'm careful not to ask for verification of the report one way or the other. I work in the White House. I'm not the president's outside counsel, George, that the president may be submitting answers to questions. So we'll see what happens. But I have to repeat it. 1.4 million pieces of paper and over 33 people have met with Mr. Mueller in some type of capacity. We've been nothing but helpful here. And I think comments that Matt Whitaker made as a private citizen on cable TV does not disqualify him from being fair and impartial by overseeing this investigation.
So the president does not want him to recuse from the Mueller investigation?
The president has not discussed that with me. In fact, this morning when he called me from Paris, he said I'm 100%, we were talking about other things, but I'm 100% behind Matt Whitaker, and he's never asked him to recuse. In fact, I've never heard the president mention Matt Whitaker and Bob Mueller in the same sentence in my presence. And I've been in some of those meetings in the Oval Office with Matt Whitaker. He's there doing the Justice Department's business. The Justice Department does an awful lot more for this country beyond the Mueller investigation, and we should remember that.
There's also the question of whether or not the appointment of Mr. Whitaker is legal. You saw Gerald Nadler say he doesn't think it is. Your own husband raised this question in an op-ed in the New York Times. I want to read that for everyone. He said that Mr. Trump's installation of Matthew Whitaker as acting Attorney General of the United States after forcing the resignation of Jeff Sessions is unconstitutional, it's illegal, and it means that anything Mr. Whitaker does or tries to do in that position is invalid. And at that same press conference on Friday, the president was asked about it.
Kellyanne's husband wrote that
You mean Mr. Kellyanne Conway?
He wrote that you were unconstitutionally appointing him. He's wrong.
He's just trying to get publicity for himself. Why don't you do this? Why don't you ask Kellyanne that question, all right?
So here we are.
Here we are.
So a few things. People disagree. Spouses disagree every day. I'm sure you can appreciate.
So you don't agree with your husband's argument?
No, I don't. But it's also not relevant. In other words, people disagree on the Constitution. That's why we have a U.S. Circuit Court system and indeed a United States Supreme Court. They are there to interpret the law, and they disagree about the Constitution regularly. When the president, but I think there's something also instructive here. The president's lawyers apparently have told him that it's constitutional. There's a statute from 1998, obviously, the vacancies statute. There is a DOJ opinion from 2003. And there's also, I think, as they said, Supreme Court precedent. But more to this point, the journalist asking the president of the United States the question referred to him as Kellyanne's husband. And he is referred to Kellyanne Conway's husband or Kellyanne's husband far more often than he's referred to, even by his first name. So
the president makes that Mr. Kellyanne Conway.
Which is, I'm sure the feminists are very proud of me, George, that I'm an independent thinker who has a strong, powerful position in the United States government, counselor to the president. I offer my advice and opinion to the president in private. I don't need to put on the op-ed pages of any. And by the way, none of this will be litigated in newspapers or on TV.
Isn't that hard for you? Listen, like you say, your spouses disagree all the time. That's exactly right. My wife is a comedian. We basically stay in our own lanes. I stay out of comedy. She stays out of politics. Isn't it hard for you to have your husband writing an op-ed like that, disagreeing with the president?
I will tell you this. It is with the president. When the president says, Mr. Kellyanne Conway, and asks Kellyanne, the president's never worried how it affects him. He's always worried about how it affects me. And I really appreciate that from my boss, from the president. He is really great to the women who work for him. And he also was pointing out that my husband's known as me. I'll keep the rest of the question private. I don't think it's nice, and I think people questioning publicly aspects of our marriage and the rest of our life is very inappropriate because I stay out of other people's lives. But on this one, I think what people write is rational people, reasonable people disagree about the Constitution every single day. And I choose, because I'm in a position to do so, to give my advice and opinion to the president privately.
We have recounts now in the state of Florida, governor and Senate races, agriculture as well. The president put out a tweet on that yesterday, trying to steal two big elections in Florida. We are watching closely. Does the president have any evidence the Democrats are trying to steal those elections? The Secretary of State says there is none.
Well, the evidence is that Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis have won. In fact, Andrew Gillum conceded on the night of the election.
Well, they're
now
both
we're going
underneath
backwards.
the threshold for an automatic recount.
Maybe now they are, but there has been no recount that has ever turned around a total as large as we have now in either of those races. I'd say the agriculture commission race is even closer. But so no, and even Mark Elias, the attorney for
Democrats attorney.
Yes, Democrats attorney, has stated in the past that margins like this can't be overcome. He also made a very peculiar comment saying that we're going to win this. That's not really what people should be worried about here. People should be worried about a fair process. And George,
but
we just
any
can't...
evidence this is being stolen? One piece of evidence.
Well, yes, we have boxes of votes just appearing out of nowhere. We have Brenda Snipes, who obviously has been sued successfully by a primary opponent to Debbie Wasserman Schultz for shenanigans that happened there years ago. She probably shouldn't still be in that position, so maybe new Republican Governor Ron DeSantis will do something about that. But she's obviously somebody who's had past practices that have come under criticism by Democrats and Republicans. And I think that Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis will prevail here, and we're looking at that. But also look at the rules. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, has been very clear about this, George. He has said, if you look at the rules, we're not still counting votes like they are in Arizona, for example. The vote count is over, and those provisional ballots had to be in by a time certain that is not 5 days after the election, which is what today. Also, I say something about Senator Bill Nelson. The last time he ran in 2012, he won by 1.1 million votes. Clearly, the people of Florida don't want him to be their senator anymore, and he should go out a little bit more gracefully. They want fresh blood.
It is in the threshold for a recount. We'll see how that turns out. Kellyanne Conway,
thank you, George.
Thanks for your time this morning. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.